G'day from Australia. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land from which I'm broadcasting. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Ashley Davis. Welcome to my coding live stream. Today is a special coding live stream. I'm doing it as a favour to a friend. I'm developing a React UI component for them. And so I've decided to open source it and live stream it as I code it up from nothing into a working React UI component. I'm going to be open sourcing the project on GitHub, so you'll be able to see it there very soon. I'll have that online so you can follow along. It's going to be published on the Npm package repository. So also very soon you'll be able to see that there. You'll be able to install the component and use it in your own projects. I'm going to be coding using Typescript and testing with Jest and Enzyme. And while I'm working, I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I'm going to be doing at least a couple of new things today, so there's guaranteed to be a couple of mistakes at least, but you'll see my process in real time and how I deal with problems as they come up. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is AshleyDavis75. I'm just going to start by showing you what I'm building today. So what I want to build is an outliner component. It's going to look a little bit like this. This is a product called Workflowy, which is a really cool little application for taking notes. You can just type notes here in the browser. It saves them for you. You can make like a tree of notes basically as well. So it's hierarchical. So this is what I'm going to be building today. We're going to take a look at this again soon to kind of understand the structure behind this application and the way the HTML works for this. So we're going to come back to that. I am going to be putting this recording on YouTube later, so I'll just show you where you can find that. If you go to my channel, YouTube, The Data Wrangler, under playlists, I'll have, this is my normal coding live stream for my Kanban board extension to Visual Studio Code. I'm going to put another playlist up there for today's live stream. I don't know yet how long this live stream is going to go. I don't know how long it's going to take me to create this React UI component and publish it. I'm hoping to complete it today. You know, it could take a few hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do at least hourly sessions, and I'll put them on YouTube later as a series of videos. So what do you need to follow along? Well, if you want to do what I'm doing today, you're going to need something like Visual Studio Code. Now, anything like this is just a Google away. To find it, you know, to download this and install it, whatever platform you're on. You're also going to need Node.js, which you can also get for any platform. I'm working on Windows 10, but most of what you'll see me do today, almost all of it, you know, you should be able to do on Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. And if you come onto this this page to get Node.js on your platform, it's going to show you the version for your platform. Now, so I'm creating something that we're going to call an outliner. It's going to look like what you see here in Workflowy. Like, it's a bit like a to-do list, I suppose, but it's just kind of for taking notes and organizing them hierarchically. Now, I have done a bit of preparation for this. So going into any project, any coding project, you've got to do some planning, right? You've got to understand where you're going with it. So in the days leading up to this live stream, I've asked myself a bunch of questions like, you know, how am I going to test this? You know, how do I even do testing of React components, which is not something I've done a lot of. All the kinds of things I might want to do while testing, you know, how will I test this in a test bed? How do I even publish a React component, which is, again, it's not something I've done. I've published plenty of NPM packages, but I've never published a React component as an NPM package. And I think it's pretty much the same as any other NPM package. As from what I can see, there's nothing more to it. So that shouldn't present a problem. I do want to add drag and drop. That's probably going to be tricky, but I'm going to use a library to help me with that. And yeah, so part of the process of preparing for this live stream is to just ask myself about how I do all the things that I want to do while I'm coding, and have some answers ready to go for those things. And most of this stuff, some of this stuff I just know. Obviously, I've been developing using TypeScript and Node.js for a while. I've been developing using React for a while, so I just know some of this. But there's other stuff like how do I unit test a React component? So normally I would do end-to-end testing of my entire web page using Cypress, but I've never done unit testing of a React component. So there was a couple of different options. I'm going to go with Enzyme today. It seems pretty cool. Hopefully I won't have any problems getting that to work. So this is some of what I've done to sort of pre-research what I'm doing today. I've also got a kind of a more structured plan document here that I've written up. I've got a bunch of milestones here to get through this project. We'll go through those in a second. I spec'd out what I want the interface to look like. How you can create a new note by hitting enter. Tab and shift tab can indent and unindent a note, and then be able to grab each note and drag and drop it to rearrange it. The kinds of operations we want to do, what kind of data model we might want to use to represent this, how it's going to be structured, how it's going to be styled, and some of the resources that hopefully are going to be useful in developing this component. But back to the actual milestone. So I've got some checkpoints here. Basically, that I'm going to go through getting through this. My first milestone is to actually just create a stub React component. Actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a test bed as well to test it in context. And then I'm going to just straight away get it on GitHub, and I'm going to publish it on Npm. At this stage, it's not going to do much. It's not going to do basically anything. But just to get that out of the way first, to show you how I'm going to share the code on GitHub and how I'm going to publish it on Npm. Milestone 2 is we're going to create a simple content editable component. I'll show you what that means in a moment. Milestone 3 is we're going to expand a simple editable component into a list of things, a list of notes. We're going to be able to use the enter key to add a new item, control delete to remove an item. Milestone 4 is adding drag and drop to rearrange the list. And then milestone 5 is being able to expand it into a tree. And at this point, we'll be able to use tab to indent, to create a nested note, and shift indent to move a nested note back to the parent. Deleting a parent note here should also delete any children that it has. So that's what I'm following here. Again, we'll see how far we get with this today. If I can't get through it today, live streaming is kind of takes a fair bit of energy, I suppose. So if I get too worn out from this, I'll put a hold on it and we'll come back to it another day. But anyway, the first thing we're going to do is try and get to milestone 1. Now, what I'm going to do before I get too far into it, I'm going to actually use the Create React App tool to create my test bed, because that can take a few minutes to actually create. And so while I'm doing the rest of the stuff here, I want to have that basically, getting ready. So I've got my command prompt open here. I've got a directory already made up. So what I'm going to run is npx. Npx is a tool that comes with Node.js that allows us to run basically non-global packages. So I can just say run create React app. Create app. That's not going to do anything, is it? Create React app. I'm going to call it outliner testbed. And I'm using TypeScript today rather than JavaScript. But you can add the -- TypeScript flag to create React app to generate the TypeScript version of the application. So this is creating a stub React application that I can use to test the React component that I'm going to make. So this is a really quick and easy way to get started with React. So after this is complete, we'll have a working React application that we can work on and update. Now, like I said, that could take a while, so let's see what I'm doing now. I'm going to create a stub React component. So I could use npm init to create a fresh Node.js project, and then I could install, TypeScript and configure it. But that takes a fair bit of effort, and it's tricky. It's easy to get wrong, and it's kind of boring to watch. I've also done that in other live streams before, so you can probably find it on my YouTube channel if you want to see how to do that. But for today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from my TypeScript template, which I've got here on my GitHub account, TypeScript template. This is, it doesn't include React, but it's just a basic TypeScript project that I can clone to get started. I've recently updated this to the latest version of TypeScript, so it's all ready to go. So if you want to make your own TypeScript project as well, I definitely recommend having a look at this. It makes it really easy to get started. It includes Jest as well, so we can do testing. I'm just going to make a new tab in my terminal here. So I'm going to clone a copy. I'm going to use Git to clone a copy of this project. So I could download it here. I could just download the whole zip file. So that's a good way. If you don't want to use Git, that's another good way to get started. You can just download code and start playing with it. But I'll use Git. So Git clone. I'll give it the URL of the repo. I'm going to call it React Outliner. So if I didn't include that, it would just clone it into a directory called TypeScript Template. That is the default. But I'm telling it to go here because I'm using this as a template for my new project, basically. While that is cloning, I'm just going to check how my Create React app is going. Yep, that's still going. So now I'm going to change the directory into my React Outliner. I'm going to start Visual Studio Code from this directory. Okay, so I've got Visual Studio Code open on my project. I might just show you some of the things you can do out of the box with this TypeScript template. There's a whole bunch of scripts here you can run. So there's scripts here for just running it in development with live reload. There's scripts here for testing it. So just to show you, actually, I'll run the test command. So I'll run npm test. There's only like one test here, just like an example test. Oh, you know what? I forgot to install my dependencies. So, I mean, it's saying, it's trying to run tslint here, and it's saying it's not recognized as an internal or external command. That basically just means it's missing, but, it's because I forgot one of the most basic things you could forget when setting up a new project, and that is to install your dependencies. Hopefully this won't take too long. Let's see how Create React App is going. Yep, still going. It's not going anywhere quickly, is it? I am actually on Wi-Fi hotspot, so it's a pretty good throughput for bandwidth, but it can be a little bit unreliable, and this thing takes ages normally anyway. That's why I thought I'd just start it right now instead of trying to do this a little bit later when I actually come to need it. Now, while this is actually going, should I move on with something else? I really need for this to finish. It won't take long. Actually, while that's installing, I might have a quick look at my Tailwind cheat sheet. So I really love using Tailwind for CSS. And this is a cheat sheet of all the kind of different commands you get, all the different CSS classes you get with Tailwind. It's really cool. You can search for stuff like what I really want to use today, I think, is the Flexbox stuff. And I'm by no means a CSS expert, so I really rely on things like Tailwind, and I like frameworks like Ant Design and Blueprint.js. I really rely on those CSS frameworks to be able to give me all the CSS, and I do a little bit of custom CSS, but like I said, I'm not an expert, so I really rely on this sort of stuff to know what I'm doing. And I use things like flex row and flex column a lot. Flex grow somewhere here as well. I love using Flexbox to structure the layout of my UIs. And what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna use Tailwind because I don't really want to introduce a big dependency that I don't need. I want to keep this really simple, but I'm gonna steal their styling. So I come here and I know I want to use the Flex class, and I know this is the CSS styles that I need. So this is where I'm going to come back to refer when I need to actually add some styling to this this outliner that I'm developing today. So that's if you're interested, that's nerdcave.com Tailwind cheat sheet. Okay, I'm just switching back to my terminal. I've got my npm install done, and I've got my create React app done as well. So let's just have a quick look at this, where we are with this create React app. Actually, I'll change direct into my React outliner. I'll start Visual Studio Code there. Hang on, that's not where I wanted to be. Sorry, I wanted to go into React. Where was it? Outliner testbed, that's it. So I'll start Visual Studio Code there. So this is the template React application that we just created. It's a JavaScript application, but that doesn't matter. I mean, we're going to be testing. I'm building a React UI component using TypeScript, but it's going to be compiled to JavaScript, so we're going to be able to include it in any old JavaScript application. So it's that said, I thought I'd actually kind of configure this to be TypeScript. What happened? So I put -- TypeScript on here, and it didn't seem to have done what I expected. I'm not going to go and correct that because I don't need that. I must have got something wrong here. I must have used the wrong flag because I was expecting this to be TypeScript code. But like I said, it doesn't matter because this is just the test app, and it's the React UI component that I'm developing in TypeScript, and I'm just going to integrate it into this JavaScript application. So that's going to be fine. Now, when you get in here, Create React App tells you some of the commands you can use here to build it, run it, test it, so on. Npm Start is the conventional way to start a Node.js application. So this is what's going to start our React test bed. I'm just going to get it so you can see the code and the web page side by side. It's just compiling the code now. So we've got a stub React application generated here. That's how easy it is to get started with React. Just run create React app, and it takes a little while to install, obviously. But anyway, let's change it. So I changed this to haha. You can see that there. Hopefully the live there we go. So that just live reloaded. So it's all set up so that you can just change the code, and your updates are going to come through automatically. Okay, I'm just going to close that for the moment, minimize that. We're going to come back to the test bed again when we need it, which won't be far off. I'll just kill that for the moment. So we're back to our new project for our React outliner. I've just done the npm install to get all the dependencies. What I need to do, because this is still basically my TypeScript template, and you can see the name here, Typescript Template. I need to make some changes here. So I don't want it to be a TypeScript template. I actually want it to be my React outliner. So I need to update some of this metadata. I'm going to start it off at version 0.1 just to indicate that it's not really ready yet. We'll put a little bit of a description in here. A React UI component for typing notes. Notes. Now, there's a couple of things I don't need that are included with the template, like this CLI. I'm actually just going to make that start index.js. I mean, that start and start dev doesn't really matter for a component. We're not really going to be starting it, but I mean, that can be useful for testing, so I'll leave that there for the moment anyway. I don't know if there's anything else here that I really want to change. I do want to remove this. So there's no command line component of this package, so I'm getting rid of that. I am going to put this under a Git repo that I'm going to call React Outliner. So I'm just going to update the link to the repo. Now this is automatically comes with the dependency of moment. I don't need any kind of date time help here, so I'm just going to get rid of that to start with. Anything else that I need? All the dev stuff here looks good. I might just delete the package lock file because I'm gonna. Oh no, I'll leave that. That'll get updated in a sec. That's all right. So anything else here that I need to change? I am starting a fresh Git repository. So I cloned this from the Typescript template, but I want it to be a fresh Git repository. So I'm going to remove the .git directory and just basically reset this to, oh, if that, oh sorry, rm-r.git. It's going to have a problem, isn't it? Let's do an RF. Let's force this out of the window. There you go. So this is no longer a Git directory. If I run git status, it's saying it's not a Git repository. Because I do want to start this fresh. I'm going to do a git init here to create a new Git repository. Now, I like to use Sourcetree. So let's load up Sourcetree. Sourcetree is a user interface for Git. You know, the command line's great, and you have to use it. I've got a few things open here I can just get rid of, and I'll add my new Git repository here. React Outliner. Let's get rid of that. That's my other live streaming project. So you can see here now I've got a Git repository with a bunch of things that are not committed. Let's go through and just kind of stage these at least. So I've got my git ignore file, my npm ignore file for publishing. I'll tell you more about what that is later. I've got a setup here for Jest, that looks pretty good. Basic license for 2020, that's good. Configuration for NodeMon, that allows for live reload. You'll see that in action soon. My package file, which I just updated. Oh, my package lock file is still going to be Typescript template. So I'm just going to do another npm install, and that will force packagelock.json to be updated. There's a bunch of stuff here. I'll have to write a proper readme for this. I'm just going to commit the template readme, but I'll have to write a proper readme. I've got my TypeScript configuration, my TS-lint configuration, a bunch of other stuff. Oh, I don't want this CLI, so I've got the CLI part of it, which is part of the template. That makes a command line tool out of this basically, and that's not what this project is supposed to be. So I'm going to remove that. I've got some example code there. I'm not going to stage that yet because that's what's going to have to change. And I've got an example test there as well. Actually, I haven't tried the test yet. I should do that. Visual Studio configuration. A helper batch file there for running npm scripts. Cool. So my package.json is now React Outliner, so I'm going to stage that. By the way, I could have done all this. I could have done all this here by doing git add dot. That would have staged everything. It's just better to visually look through it and look at it in Sourcetree. You can see what's happening here, and you'll see as I go through this project today, you'll see how this can really help see the differences in changes that you're making. So what's the next step? Should I actually get this online straight away? Let's just run the test first. So it's running TS-lint, it's running Jest to run my tests. So it's just running the test at the moment that comes with it. Oh, so the test is failing now because I removed the moment dependency. That's okay. Let's just tidy this up a little bit more. So I'm going to go into the index file here, and there's just like this some example code here, but like I literally don't need anything here at the moment. So I've just got a blank file. This is where my React component is going to go. So it's going to go here, but we don't need anything just yet. In fact, what I'll do is I'll export a class, right? I'll export a class called Outliner. And soon we're going to turn that into a React UI component that you can use in any React library. But for the moment, we'll just leave it as a stub. In the tests, I want to test that I can get some tests working. I'm just going to rename my test suite to be called Outliner. And I'm going to say, yeah, expect true to be truthy. This should pass, right? True should be truthy. Cool. So I have some passing tests. So I'm just going to get this online. I'm just going to create a repository on GitHub and get this up there. Now I've already done my git init. I've created a repository locally. I've staged all my changes. I'm going to commit this. I could commit this from the command line by going git commit -m, whatever message I want. But again, you could do that, but why use that when you've got a perfectly good UI here? So I'm going to type my message into Sourcetree, which is, I don't know, a bit boring. First commit from the Typescript template. So that's the first commit on this repository. If you go to the history, you can see here. You can look at the history from Git using log, I think, Git log. So that tells me that there is one commit here. Now, I can't push this anywhere because it's not, I just created this locally. It doesn't exist on GitHub yet. So let's go to GitHub. We'll go to my account on GitHub. Go to repositories. I'm going to create a new repository. We'll call it React Outliner. That's what I plan to call it from what I put in package.json. It's good to put a description. It's good to put a description on your repository, but I've already got that written down in my package file, if you remember from a moment ago when I did this. So I'm going to copy that from there, paste it over. So it's a React UI component for typing notes. It's going to be public. Because I've already created the repo locally, like I don't want to initialize it with any of this stuff, because if I do that, I think it just makes it difficult to get up there. And I've got all that. I've got all this locally. I've got a git ignore. I've got a license. I've got a readme. I don't want to initialize my repository with any of that stuff. So I'm just going to click on create repository here. And what this should leave me with is some instructions here. So GitHub gives you these nice instructions on how to actually get your repo up there. What I want here is, how I usually do it, is push an existing repository from the command line. So I can literally just copy these commands over, which is just so helpful. Paste them into my terminal here. I'm in my React Outliner directory. So I'm just adding the remote origin. That means that I can push now to GitHub. Set the branch as main. And I'm going to git push to origin main. So this basically, oops, too much there. This basically sets it up. So then in the future, I can just run git push. So in the future, all I do is I run, it's all set up to remember where it's pushing to and pulling from. So I can do a git push to get it there. And if I want to get changes down that, maybe someone else has made or that I've made on a different computer, I can do a git pull to get my changes in from that code repository. Now, if I refresh here, I should actually have a repository. So you can see here that I've got my first commit in there. First commit from the TypeScript. All my code that I just put there is there. This is all on GitHub. You can actually get this now if you want. So, if you want to follow along, go to Ashley Davis React Outliner on GitHub, and you can clone this, or you can download the zip file if you want. Now, the README here is just the instructions from the TypeScript template. I'm not going to, fix this README in the live stream. That would be just really boring watching me write up a decent README for this. So that's something that I'm going to do later, offline. So when you come back to see this tomorrow or maybe the next day after this is recorded, you'll see that there'll be a proper README here that explains, how to use this component, how to install it in your React project, that kind of thing. That'll be really useful for people who are going to get started. But I've just created this repo, so and that's work that's yet to be done. So let's have a look at where I'm at in my milestones. So I haven't created the stub reactor component yet, so it's not really, it's just a TypeScript class at the moment, so I've got to come back and do that in a second. I have created a test bed. I should pull the stub react component into the test bed just to test that I can test it. Get it on GitHub. It's definitely up there, so that's done. Publish it on, before I publish it on NPM, I'm going to set up my stub React component. So I've got the project, but I want to turn it into a React component now. So let's do that. Now, how do we add React to an existing project? That's the question. If you use something like Create React App, it's going to set up your whole project, and it's automatically going to include all the React libraries for you. I'm installing it from scratch here. So I'm going to npm install some packages into my project here. I need React, at a minimum React and React DOM. So these are the React code libraries that I'm now bringing into my project from the npm package repository using the npm package manager. Now, because I'm using TypeScript, I also want to get the type definition. So this allows me to have my my static typing and my IntelliSense in Visual Studio Code, which is really, really amazing. And hopefully you'll see that in action in a moment. So normally you get types. I just know that this is the way it's done, but normally you get types for any npm package that has them by just putting this types. If you just put basically @types on the front of it, that'll get the types. If there are types. Now there aren't always TypeScript types available for every package that's on npm, but a lot of the big packages anyway have them, or people have created types for them. So the types either get created by the community who want to use that package in TypeScript, or they get created by the maintainer of the package itself in some cases. Now, while that's happening, what else can I do? Oh, it's over anyway, so that's cool. So now what I can do is go back to my project Visual Studio Code and actually turn this, stub TypeScript class into a React component. I'm going to import React from the React library. And that should allow me to use React component. Now, normally you could put interfaces here for props and state. We are going to need that later. I don't need that yet. So what I'm saying here is just use it's like an anonymous type. An anonymous interface is this curly brackets here. It's something that contains no fields, no properties, and it's just a quick way to add that when you don't need that yet. Now, any React component, the first thing, and at least the minimum thing I think that you need, is a render function. And this is what will actually render it on screen. So I'm just going to return a little bit of a stub here. Hello world. So this is a minimal React component. Now, what have I done? What have I done wrong here? Oh, so one problem here is that this is a TS file, as you can see up here. To use JSX, or maybe TSX as they call it, I need to make this into a TSX file. So that gets rid of some of those errors. But I've also got to enable this sort of JSX support. And I just happen to know how to do that, because if I go into my tsconfig here, there's a heap of options here that are all nicely commented in my TypeScript template, so you can see what they do. What we're interested in here is this JSX attribute here. So I'm just going to uncomment that. Now, it's defaulting here to preserve, which basically copies the JSX, which is like HTML in JavaScript. It just copies that over to the generated code. I'll show you the generated code in a second actually, but let's just change this first. I want to change it to React. So you can see that you get a bunch of options here in the comment. It's automatically going to compile it to the actual React code. and I'll show you I'll show you the JavaScript code that's generated for that in just a second. So I'll close that. So now there's no errors in this file here. I am going to build it from the command line, so I can run npm run build, which is a script that I've set up in package.json to run the TypeScript compiler. I'm just going to check that I can compile this. That's all that I'm doing here. Good, so there was no errors. Now, what happens here is that our TypeScript code is being compiled to a build directory. That's something else that is set up in the tsconfig file. So this is where you can see the JavaScript versions of everything. Just to show you that this is where it's compiling to as part of the build process, I'm actually going to delete the build directory. So we go back here now, you can see that's gone. What we were looking at, the build directory there, is gone. There is no build directory to be seen here. But if I run that same command that I ran before, npm run build, this is what produces that build directory. So if you see here, we've got a build directory now. The build directory is back when we look in here. And we can actually have a look at the code that's generated. So this is index.tsx. This gets compiled to index.js, which you can see here. And it's a bit of a mess of compiled JavaScript code. But you can see in index.tsx where I've got my div, so it's like I've got some HTML here kind of embedded in my JavaScript code, and by some sort of compiler magic, that gets turned into this call here, which is React create element div. So you can sort of dive down into the generated code and to see how this works and what your TypeScript code gets converted into. Now you wouldn't normally really look at this, but it is just interesting just to drill down and see what's happening under the hood. So what do we have to do now? So I could publish this, and in fact I will publish this on npm. So this is like version 0.0.1 of my React outliner. All it does is print hello world. So normally I probably wouldn't publish something so early, but this is a live stream where I'm showing you how to do this kind of thing, so it's great to show you, I think, early, so that we don't get confused with all the other code and development and stuff that's still yet to come, that's gonna kind of make this seem more complicated than it is. So I'm just going to check my package.json. I've called it React Outliner. The version number is important. You've got to, every time you publish on npm, you've got to have a new version number. So I'm starting at 0.0.1. Hopefully this indicates to people that we're not at version 1 yet, so maybe don't use this in production just yet. Okay, so now let's commit my latest code changes and get them up to GitHub. So I'm just in Sourcetree again here, looking at the changes. So you can see here the beauty of Sourcetree. How I wish I could zoom this in, but I can't. There's no zoom control on this, so hope everyone can see this text at this size. Just a second. Yeah, so you can see here that I've added React DOM, and the types for these libraries. There's never any point looking at package.json because it's a generated file anyway. You can see that I've changed my tsconfig file and I've enabled JSX support. I've renamed my index.ts to index.tsx. So let's stage all these changes. So I've added a stub React UI component. So that's committed. I will push it from the command line. So that is going up to the code repository on GitHub right now, and you can see the changes there and get them for yourself if you like. Now we're going to publish this stub React component on npm. Now, normally you'll have to log in and create an account on npm and log in. I've already done that, so I can already publish this. To publish this, all I do is npm publish. That's it. Now I'm going to get an error. Well, I should get an error. Let's just to see the error that I get. I've got this all set up to go through all the process of kind of running lint and running the tests. And if it fails to run the tests or it fails with lint, it's going to refuse to publish it. Also, if it fails the TypeScript build process, it's going to refuse to publish it. But that's all fine. Everything checks out. So it's published it. So I thought there was going to be a failure there. I thought I was going to have to set it to public mode, but I think it's done that by default now anyway. So that's good. I should be able to go to NPM. It might be a little bit too early to actually find this on NPM. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, it's there. So React Outliner, a React UI component for typing notes, published by Ashley Davis, version 0.0.1, a few seconds ago. So this is what we just created. Like, literally other people can kind of, you can see the readmes. The readme's not right there, but obviously that's something I'm going to fix offline outside. And then, but all it will require is me to make the readme and then do an npm publish again with a new version number to get it up there. And I'm going to be publishing this multiple times throughout this live stream, so you're going to get plenty of opportunity to see how I publish it, continue to publish changes that I'm... Now that we have it there, we can actually bring it into our test app. So this is the test app. I'm going to npm install it. While that's installing, I will get the testbed up. Kind of want to have it off the side there, so when we open the web page we can see it. Now I'm going to run this, so npm start to run it. Now, instead of having this string here, haha, I'm going to actually put my outliner here. Now, Visual Studio Code has automatically imported it, so I don't even have to type that. If Visual Studio Code can find the thing that you want to import from the library, it's going to automatically add it there for you, which is really cool. So if I save this, we should now see the text from the outliner, hello world, be displayed. So there you go. I've just created a stub React component. I've created a repository for it on GitHub. I've published it on NPM, and now I've installed it into a React test application. So where did we get to? So we've done that. We've got the stub. That is milestone 1 completed. And that is going to be the first part of this live stream. So I'm going to sign off now, but I will be back in about 15 minutes. I'm going to go and have a cup of coffee and a banana, and we'll come back, and then we're going to continue working on milestone 2. And what we're going to do actually is I'm going to show you how we can use npm link to link our package with our testbed for easy testing. We're going to be creating like just a real simple kind of text editor, like an input basically, with using content editable, and I'll explain what that is when we get there. And I also want us to get set up for test-driven development. So we'll use Jest and Enzyme for that. Anyway, that's it for the moment. I'm going to be back again in 10 to 15 minutes. Please keep an eye on the channel. I will be back. If you can't hang around and watch all of these, that's perfectly okay. You can catch up on YouTube later. Please keep an eye on my Twitter for updates, and I'll update when the videos are released. My Twitter handle is AshleyDavis75. I'll see you again soon.